Live. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to day 3 of our talk series on trauma's everyday impact. If you're joining through the replay, we'll be starting in about 5 minutes. So if you want to fast forward 5 minutes, we will be starting the session then. See you soon. Welcome, everyone. It's really nice to see some familiar faces and also a couple new faces too. Hi. For those who are not familiar, my name is Shanti, and I'm one of the members of the hosting team. We'll be starting in about 4 minutes or so. If there's anything that you'd like to grab or do in the meantime to be comfortable for the next half hour, please do so. And for those who are sort of ready to get the ball rolling, I would love to hear, anything new or interesting that you've learned in the past few days, as well as I'm really interested in the topic that we're going to be learning about in just a few minutes on anxiety. And so I would love to hear any thoughts you have on things that you've done when you felt anxious that were helpful for you. So yeah, feel free to pop it into the chat. I'm tuning in from the Lone Star State today, where it's nice and sunny and warm, and I'd love to see where you're calling in from. I can tell you that one thing that helps me with my anxiety that I've been calling on lately is just the support of loved ones. There's some people in my life who just know me really well, and they know when I'm showing signs of being anxious, when I myself might not track that it's happening for me, and they'll give me a little reminder. They're like, hey, I'm noticing you're breathing a little bit faster. Do you want to take a couple deep breaths with me? And yeah, it's been really, really helpful for me. So I'd love to hear if there's some things for you that have been great for you. We've got a couple more minutes before we get started. Our speaker for this session, Patricia, is with us now. I'm really excited.
Yeah, just to get it a little bit ahead and start a little bit before the hour. We're still waiting for the official start, but I would really love to hear what people's definitions of anxiety are.
It's a really great question.
Yeah, there's so many perspectives around, so many solutions for anxiety. Get rid of your anxiety in 5 days and stuff like that. So what do you see? What do you define anxiety as? That's an interesting question.
Yeah, I really like that question. We've got a minute to go. We've got a really great share from someone about things that they do to help with their anxiety, including petting their dog, taking herbal medicine or flower remedies, exercising really hard. Yeah, exercising for me, it's like it releases natural endorphins. I love exercising in moderation. And there's some definitions that people have here. It feels like a paralysis. Feels like tension, overwhelming fear. Yeah, fear was a word that came up for me immediately. And then I've got, when I'm anxious, it feels like there are too many thoughts in my head, like a hive of angry bees. That's like a really, really apt visual, I think. Yeah. So we're at the top of the hour. I'm going to press the record button and we'll get started, okay? Thank you so much for joining us in this little pre-game that we had. Hi there. Hello, everyone. Welcome to day 3 of our talk series on trauma's everyday impact. My name is Shanti, and I'm here to serve up some hospitality and tech. So if you have any support needs with using Zoom, don't hesitate to reach out to me via private message. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started. Special thanks first to those who have the All Access Pass and are here live for contributing to our sustainability and for giving us the joy of having humans to interact with. Please turn your cameras on if possible, no matter what you're doing, as it provides useful feedback for the presenters. Second, if you're watching a replay, you can purchase an all-access pass to get into the live Zoom room and see unlimited sessions. We also have Q&As at 12 p.m. and 6 p.m. UK. For those who are in the Western Hemisphere, that's 7 a.m. and 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. For those with the All Access Pass. And this is done by Roger Mills, a therapist who specializes in PTSD. And this session's presenter, Patricia Aguirre, our Embodiment Unlimited therapist. So please share information on this week's summit with anyone who wants to uncover the subtle ways in which trauma shows up in their lives. After the live sessions are finished, replays will be sent out. So yeah, please share the link that I'm going to paste into the chat for y'all here. It's just a registration link for this talk series. And for those who have experienced benefits from this week's summit and are interested to learn more about the topics that we have covered, we offer courses that may fit your needs, whether you're an ordinary person who's hoping to apply this to your own daily life, or whether you're a coach and facilitator or therapist who's hoping to apply this to the work that you do for your clients. Embodiment Unlimited has intentionally made these resources cheaper than their market value because we want to make this affordable and accessible for as wide an audience as feasible. And I will give you a little tour of the sites when we wrap up this session. But if you're curious now, you can check out the link in the chat that I'm putting in for you now for more details. And the last thing that I want to do before I introduce Patricia is this is a great time to do a self-safety check-in. So one question to ask is, are you resourced right now? If you aren't feeling well enough to drive a car, then this might not be a good time to watch. And a wiser choice may be to instead go do an act of self-care, whatever it is that feels good for you right now. I saw somebody shared that petting their dog was one of them, so that one sounds like a good one to me. And do something that will be kind to yourself. Another question to ask is, are you better served by one-to-one therapy? So this talk series is for education, and it's not really a therapy, and it's not designed for people currently going through the worst of their trauma. Many of our teachers have been there, so no judgment, but you'll need to be robust for these sessions. So exercise some prudence on whether this is the right time in your journey for engaging with an in-depth discussion about trauma without the guidance of a clinical professional. And no matter who you are and where you're at with trauma, definitely don't binge. Replays have been sent out, and for those of you here in the Zoom room with us and those of you who have the All Access Pass, I'm putting the link for you into the chat for you to access the replay. So, and this is just for honor code here. This is just for those of you who have purchased the All Access Pass, so please don't share with others. If you tense up, if you get agitated, or you space out, it's an indicator that maybe it's time to breathe and make a shift of some kind. So you can always watch later. We recommend movement, good company with those you trust, and nature both during and after this session to help resource yourself. So you've heard a lot from me. Having said all that, I'd like to introduce this session. We have my talented friend, Patricia Aguirre, with us again for another niche topic related to trauma. This time, it will be on trauma and anxiety. She will be looking at a question that often plagues me, which is, why am I anxious? For those not already familiar, Patricia is a specialist in developmental trauma. She integrates her knowledge and experience of 20 plus years on Eastern philosophies, applying trauma sensitive methods to family constellations and attachment based approaches. She is who young yogis want to be when they grow up. So, without further ado, I'll pass the mic over to you, Patricia.
Thank you, Shanti. Welcome, everyone. Let's get to it. So there are lots of things to say about anxiety. And I am aware that there are a lot of resources out there who want to explain or remove anxiety out of your lives. So if any of those things are working for you, go ahead and follow whatever's been working for you. This might not necessarily sound like things that you have heard outside, and that's perfectly fine. I don't intend this to be like the one and only version of things. So use your own discernment and whatever has been working for you. So I will not be speaking only on what anxiety is, because we're in a trauma summit. So I will be focusing, touch on basic points about anxiety, but aimed at trauma, right? There would be enough to talk about anxiety in general, but we're gonna be stepping into how it relates to trauma. So to me, my definition, the one that I found, and when I found it, it's like, yes, this feels more at home to me for the definition that I want to hold for anxiety. Again, it doesn't have to have the same effect for you. But to me, anxiety is unprocessed emotion. So a process that has not been completed and metabolized inside of us. Whether that's not necessarily emotion, I mean sentimental wise, but a reaction that did not see a full cycle. For whatever reason, capacity wise, situational, circumstantial, whatever reason, it was not completed. So I will use an example that I started using earlier this week, that it's as if you eat something and your stomach, for some reason, is not unable to process it, and it stays there. How would that feel in your body? Uncomfortable, uneasy to eat anything else. If you eat anything else, it will remind you that there's something still there. Of course, all of the weird movements in your body and your stomach and your balls and all of that stuff, that's signaling that something is still there. So to me, that's really similar to anxiety, right? Usually, like a very easy representation of anxiety is a stretch, the leg movement, the incessant leg movement, right? Or the incessant things that we start doing. So it's the body saying, I need to do something. I am doing something. But usually that thing that I am doing is not enough to ease and to cease and to find the completion of that process that is needed to be addressed. Yeah, we're good so far? So taking that definition into account, we're gonna start stepping that, and I'm gonna go fully old school, and I drew this. I'm gonna get this a little bit closer to you. So this is a little curve that signals nervous system arousal. So we begin in an state of ease. So I'm present, I can connect, I can laugh, I can have fun, I can rest. And regular life takes us up the hill of stimulation. What does going up the hill feel like? I gotta wake up, it's 6 or 7 or 8 a.m. and I got things to do, so my nervous system starts activating because it needs to engage with life, right? So I'm doing a presentation at work and I might get a little bit excited about it or nervous about it, and my nervous system responds to that and it kicks up a notch. And if it's a very important presentation, if it has like a super high budget, or it's very definite to what the company is gonna do with it, or something very tragically important, my nervous system is gonna still kick it up another notch, right? That's why when I have the classical scene in the movie, right? I have this very important presentation and the character will be like super tight and acting fast. And that's when we maybe are mean to other people, right? Come on, hurry up. And we yell at the people we love because our nervous system, not because we're bad, not because we're stupid, I've been saying this constantly, but because we think we have something that's more important in our focus. That's sort of like the ideal situation of how we come from a state of I'm okay, taking it easy, having rest, enjoying, and going up the hill. Going up the hill doesn't necessarily mean just bad, it just means activation. Because if I'm having fun at a party, doing stuff outside, it might also mean going up a hill. But there comes a point where I reach a level in this curve where I can reach overwhelm. Yeah, here you go, it says overwhelm. And what happens when we reach that overwhelm state and that activation was too much? That is when I start yelling at people who's not at fault, when I start forgetting to eat, when I am unable to sleep. So these are things that are considered harmful to me and to others, right? I don't know if any of you have been in or know someone who has been in a car accident, and the answer can very easily be, I was distracted. I had other things in my mind. So that means I am in a state of overwhelm where my normal functions of discernment, of consideration, of being able to see a wider spectrum of reality, they cease to exist the closer I get to overwhelm. That's why we make irrational decisions. They're not necessarily irrational. That means I have another priority, and these things are scaled down priority-wise. Yeah, I'll give you another example. When there's something that you need to do in a hurry, or something that's very important, or let's say you have a child, I don't, but let's use it as an example. And he had this important homework and he left it at home, and the carpool people just pick him up and it's leaving. And it's super important because the grade, because the teacher, because whatever. You go out running after your child, right? And like, hey, don't forget this. Do you go, oh, I gotta get dressed because I'm gonna leave home, or I should be, like tidying up my hair? No, because those things fall into another priority. And the thing is getting that stuff into the car. Again, I'm using a very simple example of how priorities shift depending on how close we are to a sensation of this is very important that we have to happen. So it's close to survival. I'm not saying that a homework is survival in itself, but it can feel like that at some points. Yeah, we're good enough so far. So the idea, it's okay to go up the hill. Ideally, we don't go as much as reaching a state of overwhelm, but the natural cycle is to go up and then down again to the state of rest, digest, and restoration. So up and down. That's why we do the classical wake up, go to work, and ease yourself back to sleep. It's a process. And as large as that, we also have other types of micro processes during the day to process those things that happen. Let's take into example this woman who rushes out, delivers that homework to the kid who's leaving. And in that scene in a movie, what would the lady do the second after she delivers the homework to the child? Yeah, she'd go, ah, right. What is she doing there? Or she would have the need to, if the neighbor's there, he'd be like, oh, do you know what just happened? I had to rush, but I was able to do it. And I felt so scared of what might happen. oh, but that's so good that I was able to deliver. What's she doing? What is she doing there in those two examples? She's sliding down the hill. Yeah, she went up the hill, and then we do these things to ease ourselves back down to rest and restoration. In the ideal world, if we have time, if we have awareness, there is always a natural tendency in our bodies to do that. That's why we usually do, kids do it. Have you seen a child like run and do something and then, and they exaggerate it a lot, right? This is so beautiful to see. They're like, oh no, I was so tired, but then I was able to arrive, mommy, and I did this and I did that. And they tell you the story, and that helps them digest, right? There is a natural cycle in our body to do this, but not always. It doesn't always happen. And when this downhill process doesn't happen, that's when things get stuck. What I meant, that thing got stuck in your stomach and it's not fully processed. So let's say, for example, and this lady in our movie, we're making a movie now. So let's say that she needs to get to work on time. And she had previously asked her partner to put the laundry in the basket so that she doesn't have to do the pickup by every room in the house, and easily put it in the washer and leave. And when she comes back into the house and she sees that the partner failed to do this process of picking up from the different bedrooms in the house, and she would usually I just saw Shanti's comment in the chat. that would be an ideal job for me. So she gets upset, right? But she's in a hurry. So she's like, he didn't do it. I asked him, how many ways do I have to say it? Is he never listened to me? Should I give up? Should I say it again? Should I say it in another way? Was I nice? Was it the other time I heard a lady say that we should, how did she say that we should ask our parents? But because she's in a hurry, right? So she's not taking it downhill. She's staying here. And now I'm in a hurry and I have to do this because tomorrow they won't have their stuff ready. So it's, again, rushing. She does the laundry stuff and now she doesn't have time to have breakfast. So she's having breakfast while she's driving, and she gets to work barely on time. And how does she get to work? Already with her hair, like occupying all of that space around her head, right? Because she didn't have that time to do this downward slide. What's going to happen when she gets home at night? Yeah, we all know that story, right? Why? Does she mean that she doesn't love the person that she's with, that she's mean naturally? We did not do the rest and digest process. Whether that was on her own, being able to ease, or actually being able to, hey, I noticed that was missing. It's really important for me to do this type of work as a team. Otherwise, I go crazy and I'm crazy all day and I don't like being in that state. It's not happy for me. It's not happy for you. So either easing yourself, like, okay, I understand that he was not able to do it. Sometimes the situation allows for that self-processing. Sometimes we need other to engage in that easing out. But whatever process that situation calls for, we do that down regulation. How are we doing so far? Makes sense that our life is put in a simple graph, right? So this is where the fun trauma things come in. I drew this line here, and this is what we could easily call our bandwidth. So how much can I take before I go into crash mode? This is my bandwidth. It changes. We all have a different bandwidth because of a million reasons. I consider myself to have a relatively reliable bandwidth if I have slept, if I had breakfast, if I have relative things covered around me. But if I had a bad night, if I had an argument with my partner that I was not able to digest and to speak about that, my bandwidth will be definitely shorter. So it's not just a fixed thing. That's the magic of humanity, right? But let's say we can talk about a width or a range of our bandwidth. What trauma comes in and does magically is shorten that bandwidth. So it's really easy to jump straight into overwhelm. So we need a bandwidth just to deal with everyday stuff: laundry, homework, being there on time, pressure from work, regular stuff. It's normal to get aroused. It's normal to get excited, to get nervous. It's all normal. But when trauma is present, we shorten that space. And it's really hard to then deal with even the smallest of things will immediately take us to the tip of the curve. Example of this: if I have a trauma or of being called an unproductive person, because let's say I grew up in a household where I needed to be productive all the time, and I was only praised by how good I was at something or how much I helped at home. So when I go in my adult state and I go to work and someone says, hey, somebody missed filing that report. And maybe nobody mentioned that I had to file that report. And somebody says, hey, you were too lazy to file that report. And I go like, because I have no bandwidth in tolerating this type of comments. And I fully go here. And instead of, hey, nobody being able to react here, which could look like, hey, nobody told me that I should file that report, but I can have it by tomorrow or by after this meeting or whatever. I am not able to respond here, and I go here. And then I go like, fuck him, like, fuck my work. And I'm gonna, they don't value me here, and now I'm gonna quit. Or I am so useless, that's right, I should have filed that report. They didn't tell me, but maybe I don't even notice the possibility of saying, hey, I never got the notification that I should have filed that thing. So responses that correspond to the action or to the situation can only happen here. It's really difficult in overwhelm to be able to establish a dialogue, to be able to take time to process, and to be able to discern what the best options are. Because here it's all about survival. How are we doing so far? This is fun, right? It's good to see you guys have bandwidth, because I'm gonna add another layer to this shortening of our bandwidth. There is also generational stuff weighing in our bandwidth. So it's not only the stuff that I went through, but also stuff that's inside and through my lineage that I can tolerate, or that I can tolerate more, or that I can tolerate less. Let's say culturally, there are tendencies for some people to be more flexible around, I don't know, like in Latin countries, it's very known that we can do well with open instructions and unclear instructions. They technically, the phrase that they use for this is comfortable with uncertainty. But there are other cultures that aren't. And if you open up, so let's start working on this. This might be important. And they're like, do I have to do a report? But what's the data? When do I have to file it? Are you gonna check it? Some cultures will feel a bigger tendency towards that. And it's not just your personality. It's not just the home you grew up in. it's also culture playing a role here, right? There's also like proximity. That's something that it's very talked about in culture. There are cultures that are literally standing not next to you, but already like in your space, and they live like that. That's perfectly fine for them. There are other cultures who need a lot of space, and when somebody starts getting closer, it reenacts a lot of stuff that takes us to weird places, right? Again, independently from our story, this is a cultural thing as well playing into that. I like seeing people laughing about this. Yeah, I mean, it's funny. Usually Latin people we are referred to as people who are very close, and yes, people are very used to touching and hugging, and we kiss everyone, we hug everyone when we greet people. But when I was in India, I was like, oh, what is this? You know, like, it was very difficult to see cultures that I felt it as a lack of respect and consideration, when my culture may be seen as a lack of consideration from other perspectives of cultures that don't tolerate that much closeness, physical closeness. So those things also contribute to how short or how wide our bandwidth goes. So as we prepare to closing this session, there are things that we can do to widen our bandwidth. One of the things, of course, and not just because I'm a therapist, and yes, because I'm a therapist, therapy works. Because we start completing those cycles of things that were not processed and that are stuck and accumulated here. All of those stuff are starting to fill up this tube. And I mean, like I already gave a lot of examples, I could go on, but the more that we start processing these things, they are taken off of that assembly line that's waiting to be witnessed, felt. I don't usually use the word release and let go. It's process and digest and integrate. We want to integrate that someplace else in the body. That's not the stomach, who needs to be ready to start processing everyday stuff all the time. Makes sense, right? So two actions to work with: widening that bandwidth, or freeing the bandwidth, and learning and start applying and integrating things to go downhill. That's the fun part. So, for example, yes, knowing how to self-regulate. We're speaking about this a lot. Ways to regulate ourselves. We can learn to do these things, but there is one very short thing that I love to do, and that is, I find it incredibly helpful in dealing with these types of accumulation of not non-digested stuff, and that is taking a moment between activities. What do I mean by that? Not necessarily I need a 30-minute break between each activity, but knowing as soon as we were going to close this session, I am closing the session. And I take a moment to feel the closeness of this, an activity that's gone, that's finished. You take a couple of seconds to say, oh, now I'm going to go to the kitchen and clean up what I did not clean before the session. When I'm done cleaning, okay, I am done cleaning now. Now I will go and do this. It takes you 2 seconds or less sometimes, but it does start signaling the body, this is done, we can digest it. Or I know what parts of this thing are not digested, but at least I have awareness of that. And that is the first step for digesting. Great, let's take a deep breath and signal to our body, this is the completion of our session. And notice what comes up when we say we're closing this session today. Yeah. Great. And notice how this experience of closing into things feels like. Wonderful. Thank you everyone for this session. I had a lot of fun, and I'm hoping that you get some takeaways out of this. If you like to share some insights or things that you want to bring into your life, you can write them in the chat. That's going to help for sure. And Shanti's gonna close us off today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Patricia. That was like so many great pearls to take away from this talk. I'm just going to before we close, I think there's a perfect segue into the thing that I like to sort of remind you all to do at the end of each session, which is write down a few things that you learned from this talk, and as Patricia said, not so much to release and let go, but to start integrating and processing it, and make sure that you take like a clear pause or a break in between this session and the next one. And to sort of wrap up our session here, I'm just going to give you a little tour of all the links that I've been putting into the chat. And so I'll put them in here for you again. So if you give me a moment here, I'm just going to do a quick screen share. And kind of 3 important links to sort of track for y'all. The first one here is the trauma is your superpower link that I put into the chat. And that's for those of you who, you've been attending these sessions and you've been getting a lot out of them, but, they've kind of been these bite-sized nuggets of like 30 minutes or so. And so if you want to go more in depth into this work with embodiment and trauma, there's a number of courses that Embodiment Unlimited has available. And depending on whether you're just like an every ordinary person like me who just wants to apply these things to my life and make some changes in my daily life, there's packages for that. And then there's packages for those of us who are might be facilitators or therapists or coaches and want to think about how you might be able to integrate this stuff and apply it to your work with clients. So there's different packages out there, and there's also, included in some of these packages is also some group work so that you can integrate your learning with a community of people. So yeah, scroll to the site and just see the options that are available to you, and if anything is like a good fit. The next link and site that I kind of want to walk you through is the site that you use to register for this talk series. If you know friends or family that might be able to benefit from this, definitely pass this link on to them sooner rather than later, because we're already almost like halfway through the week. And so for them to get benefit out, it'd be great if you could get the link to them now. And there are replays available, and I put the link for that into the chat for those who have the All Access Pass. And to get the All Access Pass, we've kept it at a pretty cheap rate of just $19 because we want it to be really affordable and accessible. And the last thing I'm going to kind of walk you through is just the schedule that we have. So we still have a lot of great talks coming up. Our next talk is actually going to be by Mark Walsh himself, and it's going to be about trauma and life purpose, and so how we can heal the subtle impacts of trauma that we've had in our lives to find our life purpose. So that's going to be at 2300 UK time, and for me here in Central Standard Time, that's going to be at 5 p.m. And after that, we have another couple of great talks by Mel Gutierrez, as well as Mark Walsh from Milan, Stefani, on trauma and addiction and trauma and guilt. So a lot of great stuff coming up. So yeah, definitely take a look at the schedule and see which might be sessions that you're particularly interested in, and maybe plan out the next few days, and so that you can get the most out of it. So I'll stop the share here, and I want to give you all enough time to really take that pause and break for yourself. So we'll end now, and I just want to thank Patricia one more time, because she always brings her A game to all of these talks, and we're so lucky to have her. And so with that, I bid you well. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care of yourselves. Be nice to yourselves. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.